No, the Chantel, what's your emergency?
I'm dead.
Hello? No, this is not what's happening. Hello? Let me speak to the other person in the background so I can understand what's going on. Let me speak to your little brother so he can tell me. Let me speak to your little brother. Okay, do you guys need police or paramedics? What's going on?
He stabbed me.
What's going on? Do you need police or paramedics? What's going on?
I'm hurt real bad.
Do you need police?
Yes.
Okay, what's happening? The reason why you need police?
On the 22nd of September 2009, Latasha Bradfield pulled into her driveway. She thought about leaving her car parked outside, but noticed her neighbour, Gary Green, had his car parked in his garage. Latasha figured she would do the same, as it looked like it was going to rain. Later that day, whilst Latasha was having a meal with her family, she heard someone banging on her door. She opened the door and saw 12-year-old Jerome and his 9-year-old brother Jerrett. Jerome was crying and Jerrett was on the phone and holding his stomach. Latasha, now concerned, asked what was wrong. Jerrett said, "Gary stabbed me." Latasha didn't believe him at first, but Jerome said, "He did. He killed my mum." Today's story may be alarming to some, so viewer discretion is advised. Lovetta Armstead was a teacher from Dallas, Texas. Her mum described her as friendly, outgoing, and trusting. She had a positive attitude and loved people. Whilst in college, Lovetta became the president of her sorority and was loved by many. On her 20th birthday, Lovetta gave birth to her first son Jerome, who she affectionately called JT. She went on to have 2 more children, Jerrett and Jazzmen, and raised them as a single mum before she met the monster, Gary Green. Around 2008, Lovetta introduced her boyfriend Gary to her children, who looked up to him. Gary moved in shortly after. They lived together for about a year before the two decided to get married. However, when Gary moved in, the atmosphere changed. He was controlling, aggressive, and abusive, and would often beat the children, especially the 2 boys, with belts, and didn't care where the belt landed on their bodies. Lovetta would do her best to protect her children. However, over time, she became increasingly fearful of Gary as his controlling, abusive behavior worsened. Lovetta grew tired of Gary's abusive ways and told her neighbor Latasha that she had made a big mistake marrying Gary and was going to get the marriage annulled. On the 22nd of September, Lovetta wrote 2 letters to Gary stating that although she loved him, she needed to do what was best for her and her children, which meant parting ways and Gary moving out immediately. When Gary read the letters, he wrote a letter expressing his rage and belief that Lovetta and her children were involved in a plot against him. The letter stated that Gary planned to take 5 lives, including his own. On the same day, JT and Jerrett were at Bible study when they saw Gary dressed all in black. He was there to pick them up, which they thought was strange as Lovetta was the only one to pick up her kids. Something was off about Gary. He was smiling and laughing, which they had never seen before. He asked questions like, "How was your day? What did you do at church?" Questions he had never taken the time to ask before. When they arrived home, Gary said he was going to call Lovetta and told JT to get in the bath and told Jerrett to get ready for bed. JT got into the tub. Jerrett changed into his favourite Garfield pajamas. Gary called Jerrett into the kitchen. He was sitting on the counter when suddenly Gary grabbed Jerrett and tried to slit his throat. It didn't work as he tried cutting his throat with a butter knife. Gary grabbed a sharper knife, but somehow the blade broke. Gary wasn't done. He grabbed another knife. Jerrett screamed out to his brother for help. JT heard his brother screaming, grabbed some clothes and ran out of the bathroom. He saw Gary walking towards the bathroom holding Jerrett by the scruff of his neck and holding a box of knives. He pushed them into the bathroom and locked the door. Gary pushed Jerrett so hard that he fell and hit his eye on the edge of the toilet. He began to tell them how much he loved their mother and questioned them as to whether she was seeing other men. He then asked JT and Jerrett to give him one reason why he shouldn't kill them. Jerrett said, "Because we're too young to die." Gary told Jerrett to shut up and stabbed him in the stomach. He tried to stab JT but missed. JT stood up and pushed this 365-pound, 6'3" man. Gary barely moved. Jerrett begged Gary not to kill them and told him how much he loved him, which seemed to calm Gary down. Gary then told the boys he had something to show them. Holding a knife to Jerrett's neck, he led them to their mother's bedroom, unlocked the door, and pushed it open. The first thing JT and Jerrett saw was their mother's lifeless body on the floor, surrounded by blood. JT and Jerrett ran over to their mum and fell on their knees and screamed for her to wake up. Unfortunately, Lovetta had already taken her last breath. Gary wasn't done. He told JT and Jerrett to look in the bathroom, where they saw their 6-year-old sister Jasmine's body laying against the tub, with her hands duct taped behind her back and blood all over the bathroom. Their sister did not appear to be breathing. Gary told Jerrett to get him some clothes and instructed JT to get him some pills that were on the dresser. Gary threw their mother's cell phone on the bed and told them to call the police once he left. JT attempted to dial 911, but Gary ordered him to wait until he left. Gary said that even though he had killed their mother and sister, he loved their mother to death and didn't want a divorce. Before he left the house, he made the boys hug him. The boys called 911 and ran next door to alert their neighbor, Latasha.
No, the shot double shot murder.
Hello?
No, that was hello. Let me speak to another person in the background so I can understand what's going on. Let me speak to your little brother so he can tell me. Let me speak to your little brother. Okay, do you guys need police or paramedics? What's going on?
He stabbed me.
What's going on? Do you need police or paramedics? What's going on?
I'm hurt real bad.
Do you need police?
Yes.
Latasha took the phone from Jerrett and walked over to Lovetta's home while talking to the 911 operator.
Walk away and talk to me so I can know what's going on. Walk away from them, please.
Okay, I'm walking outside.
What happened?
Okay, go back in, baby, go back in. They're saying, I'm walking over to the house now.
Okay.
I'm walking to the house now. They are saying there's a 12-year-old young man, there's an 8-year-old young man. They are saying that the husband has stabbed the mom and the daughter, and he has driven away to kill himself.
He stabbed the mother, and how does the daughter?
And the daughter is 6. Lovetta! I don't want to touch nothing.
Don't touch nothing, okay?
I don't want to touch
inside of 3844 now?
Yes, ma'am. I'm leaving back out. She's not breathing. I'm just so trouble.
Not breathing?
No, ma'am.
Who's not breathing, the mother or the 6-year-old?
The mother. I can't even find the 6-year-old. I'm scared to be in here just in case she comes back because I don't know what's going to happen. Oh, my God. He's so cute.
Female is not breathing?
No, ma'am. She's not responding.
She can't, and you can't find
There's blood everywhere. There's blood everywhere. Oh.
And you can't find the 6-year-old?
I didn't go back in. I didn't go back in. I didn't go back in.
Do you know the husband's name?
His name is Gary Green. Oh, can someone please come? This lady is laying on the ground.
Yes, ma'am. The girl is in the bathroom?
That's what they say. The mom is like right in the midst of the. She's in the walkway of the bathroom, and I didn't touch her. I
Covered with blood, you said?
That area, it's all covered in blood. It's all covered in blood.
The police arrived at the crime scene and found Lovetta laying on the floor, faced up in a contorted position with multiple stab wounds. They walked into the bathroom. There was blood everywhere, on the floor and the counter. The toilet tank lid was shattered on the floor, as well as broken knives and broken blades. Alongside the bathtub, they found 6-year-old Jazzmen lying on her side, bound with duct tape and electrical cords.
Young Dallas boys recovering today after being stabbed, allegedly by his stepfather. Police say the boy's mother and his younger sister died in the attack. Both were stabbed to death last night at their home in Morning Springs Trail in Oak Cliff. That's where CBS 11's Arzo Dost is live tonight with details on the investigation. Arzo?
And Doug, Dallas police tell us Gary Green was waiting here at this house for his wife. She'd recently filed for divorce. Police say as soon as she walked into this house, she was attacked. And then, so were her kids. Yellow police tape surrounds Lovetta Armstead's one-story brick home. On this day, her distraught sister comes by the house, hoping there was a mistake.
Wait a minute, what happened? I just got a phone call. They told me that this is
The DISD substitute teacher had just gotten home Monday night with her 6-year-old daughter, Jasmine Montgomery. She had dropped off her 2 sons at church. Here at home, police say Gary Green stabbed her and then turned on his stepdaughter.
She was a very kind lady and she did not deserve it.
Green then went to church to pick up his 9- and 12-year-old stepsons. Back at the house, he stabbed the younger boy in the stomach. His older brother was not hurt.
The 2 boys were able to, we believe, talk Mr. Green out of killing them.
The children were not Green's biologically. Neighbors say he was a devoted father.
But you couldn't tell the difference. You couldn't tell if they were or were not. You know, he was a dad to them. He'd have them outside, and the little girl would ride her bicycle, and, you know, he'd be out with them.
Now, after Green left this house, police say he tried to kill himself by overdosing on prescription medication. He then called his mother. She's the one who convinced him to turn himself in. He is charged with capital murder. In Dallas, Arzo Dost, CBS 11 News.
Gary attempted to take his own life. However, he was unsuccessful. Several hours later, Gary turned himself into the police and confessed to the killings. During the confession, Gary told police that he had heard voices in his head telling him to kill Lovetta and her children, as he believed the family was plotting against him and thought that by killing the family, he would ensure that they would all be reunited in heaven. He also told the police about the letter Lovetta had written, explaining the marriage was not working out, and told the police that he had responded to her letter. He wrote, "You asked to see the monster, so here's the monster you made. There'll be 5 lives taken today, me being the 5th. I pray that the Lord allows my soul to enter heaven." He explained to the police that Lovetta was sitting at the end of the bed reading the letter he had written to her when he walked into the bedroom with Jasmine tied up. He then began to attack Lovetta for over an hour and a half, all while Jasmine watched. I can't imagine how terrified Jasmine must have felt watching this beast attack her mother. In this gruesome act of savagery, he stabbed 32-year-old Lovetta 30 times. This monster then took Jazzmen into the bathroom, filled up the bathtub and drowned her, then went to pick up JT and Jerrett. During the trial, the prosecution first introduced testimony by Gary's high school girlfriend, Jennifer Wheeler. She testified that after she broke up with Gary, she gave him a ride home one morning when she saw him at a bus stop near her house. During this encounter, Gary forced Jennifer into the passenger seat, drove her to a park, strangled her with his shoelaces, and stabbed her in the stomach. He then drove her to the hospital where he lied and told the family that she had been robbed. He pled guilty to aggravated assault. The prosecution also introduced evidence showing Gary had pleaded guilty in Dallas County in 1990 to a charge of aggravated robbery. A Texas Department of Criminal Justice Parole Division caseworker testified that he interviewed Gary in prison in 1992. During the interview, Gary stated that he sold crack cocaine for about 6 months to see if he could get away with it, and committed armed robbery of the grocery store where he had been employed as an act of revenge for his termination. Belinda Lacey, a former correctional officer at a Texas Department of Criminal Justice facility where Gary was incarcerated, testified that he married her and abandoned her shortly after she helped convince state parole officers to release him. Shalonda Ransom, the mother of Gary's 2 children, testified that he tended to anger easily and choked her to the point of unconsciousness. Gary's aunt, Shirley Coleman, also testified extensively regarding the history of mental illness in Gary's family. Gary's mother was the oldest child in her family. She was not an attentive parent and had also been hospitalized twice for nervous breakdowns. She believed that Gary acted like a normal kid in high school, but after returning home from his first prison stint, he behaved differently. He brought a wife with him, had no friends, and would often burst out laughing for no apparent reason. Linnell Williams also testified about her relationship with this monster. She met Gary around December 2003. They eventually began a romantic relationship. They shared an apartment for 2 years. She said Gary often spoke when there was no one else in the room. He talked about vampires as if they existed and claimed to hear rats that she could not hear. Gary's maternal grandmother also testified regarding his childhood. She testified that as a child, Gary grabbed and bit the head off a snake. But when she attempted to tell Gary's mother about the incident, she didn't want to hear about it and insisted nothing was wrong with him. He also set fire to a dog. A neuropsychologist testified that Gary suffered from schizoaffective disorder of the bipolar type, a severe mental illness characterized by severe depression. However, he clarified that he was not saying that the mental illness made Gary murder his wife and stepdaughter. On the 5th of November 2010, the jury returned with its verdict and found Gary Green guilty of capital murder. During the victim impact statements, people were visibly moved as a 30-second video of Jazzmen was played in the courtroom. Jerrett also took the stand to address Gary directly. He said, "Hey Gary, I love you, and I thought you weren't going to betray me like this. To me, you were my father. I love you. But I'm not going to let you take over my life." On the 22nd of November 2010, Gary was sentenced to death and to this day remains on death row. Gary Green took his wife's life and made his 6-year-old stepdaughter watch then drowned her, all in the name of revenge. He stated in his letter to Lovetta, "I pray that the Lord allows my soul to enter heaven. There's no place for you in heaven, Gary Green. May you rot in hell for all eternity." My sincere condolences to the friends and family of the victims. May Lovetta and Jazzmen's memory be a blessing for all those who knew them. Thanks so much for watching. Please respect the family and the victims in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video.